Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of From the Ground Up, real-time issues with real-time solutions, sponsored by Queen Strategy Partners. I'm excited to be with you once again on behalf of Nicole Valentine, Esquire, Danielle Douglas, and myself, Dr. Stacie N.C. Grant. We're excited that we've been bringing these solutions to the MWBE community during this climate that we're living in, this new normal, and making sure that we can all thrive post this COVID-19, I say, nightmare. But we will all be fine and get through it together. We're a true example of collaboration, three businesses that came together, understanding that we're more powerful, pooling and utilizing and leveraging our individual capacities in a collective way so that we can give these answers to our MWBE cohort. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our co-host for today, my partner, Danielle Douglas.
So good morning, everyone. I am so happy to have you with Stacie and I once again for a phenomenal show. You know, we had received such great feedback from last week's show, how to successfully get a contract as an NWBE. We thought it was really important to continue the conversation so that we can continue to assist you and by providing solutions about this very important topic. As you know, right here in Southeast Queens, we have a major infrastructure project, the JFK redevelopment project. And our guest, one of our guests, Carl Peters, he was with us last week, and I'm about to introduce him. But we have another guest, Anthony Peterson, and Stacie will be introducing him, who are two important people as it relates to the JFK redevelopment project. So we wanted to bring them on again, Carl, as well as bring Anthony on to really give you the insight and the scoop on how you can successfully get a contract as an NWBE, specifically as it relates to the JFK redevelopment project. So without further ado, we're going to introduce our guests. Our first guest, Carl Peters, is a principal business analyst and compliance manager with the Port Authority's Office of Diversity and Inclusion. In this capacity, he informs NWDBEs about Port Authority business opportunities, hashtag Port Authority business opportunities, and guides them on how they can do business with the agency. Additionally, he oversees the NWDBE compliance requirements for Port Authority projects at JFK and LaGuardia airports to ensure each fulfill the NWDBE goals are good faith efforts. Carl earned his bachelor's degree from Cornell University in policy analysis and management. He has a master's from NYU in public administration and is a certified contract compliance administrator. So with that said, as you can see from Carl's bio, he's going to have a lot of great information, as he did last week, to share with you this morning. And I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Stacie, so she can introduce our other guest, Anthony Peterson.
Yes, we're excited to have Anthony Peterson join us. He's the executive director at Crescent Consulting Associates, a company who collaborates with project teams, developers, construction managers, general contractors, majority and minority firms to ensure compliance on all aspects of EEOC, diversity, local, and integrity monitoring programs. Peterson is currently working at the JFK redevelopment project to ensure compliance on all levels, i.e. minority and women business enterprises, service disabled veteran-owned businesses, local and workforce goals, which is important for the MWBEs listening. He's also one of New York's leading advocates and compliance officers for MWBEs and SBVOBs. All these acronyms in the government will give you a headache, but he's been doing this since 2001, and it has been instrumental in assisting MWBEs to obtain over $1 billion with a B, dollars in contract awards. He knows what he's talking about. He also leads the charge for SDVOBs, and he was instrumental in assisting in the largest award of a prime contract from a New York State agency or authority to a SBVOB in the amount of $9 million. $9 million. So let that just sink in for a little bit. We brought the experts to you today to really continue this conversation. Ultimately, for an MWBE, if you're not getting a contract, then it's going to cause you a level of frustration. So this is real-time issues in the midst of COVID-19 that we're bringing you this information to get you to the solutions and the contract. And somebody say cha-ching that you're looking for.
Cha-ching.
So let's get into it. Danielle, you want to open up and just talk about where we are in this COVID environment, and we're going to ask our guests a series of questions. And if you're watching and you have questions, put your questions in the chat. We will get to those questions. And if you know businesses who might be interested in becoming MWBE, are an MWBE, tell them about the broadcast. Share this broadcast out. Let them know that we are here and we're excited to be a part of this opportunity to serve our community during this time. So over to you, Danielle.
So the first question really is posed to both of you. And Anthony, we're going to start with you. And that is, during COVID-19, we don't really have the opportunity to network in the traditional fashion. So with that said, how do NWBEs network with primes and other NWBEs with subcontracting and joint venturing opportunities?
Well, first, let me just say thank you guys for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I'm really happy and excited because you made me put on a tie today anyway. But that's a good question. But I also think that it should be part of any normal business activities. For example, what people should be doing is they should be creating databases of firms that they have met, government agencies, important people, and doing e-blast constantly, whether it be, weekly, monthly, stuff like that. So at this difficult time, what I would suggest firms to do is to kind of start to collect all the people they've been in touch with and maybe start doing things like, we have a sale this week on widgets, whatever it is. If you normally charge $10, you might say, you know what, during this COVID season, let me do it for $8, for example. That's just one thing that I would definitely do. Obviously, there's the other way, which I call the old-fashioned ways. Pick up the phone, start to reach out to people that you know in, whether it's government agencies. I know someone, for example, at EDC, and I can give them a call and say, hey, guys, what do you have going on? And third, and most importantly, what anyone should be doing, especially if they're looking for government work, is I would be signing up to the New York City Record as well as the New York State Contract Reporter. Those are two very important publications that people should be signed up to so that they can see what's coming up the pipeline. They can see all of it, because government agency, especially on the New York State side, anything over $50,000 has to be advertised. So it's a great way to stay connected to what's going on out there.
Can you repeat that? Just for the audience, Anthony, just tell them again, what are the two places that they should be subscribing to?
Yes, you should subscribe to the New York City Record, and you go to Google and type in New York City Record. And what that does is it's going to list all the advertising from city agencies. On the state side, you should be doing New York State Contract Reporter. And same thing, just Google it. You will get the website. You'll be able to sign up. For the most part, they're free to sign up. There's other things that you can pay for, but for the most part, you get free information. Those are two things. On the federal side, if you want to go, you can look at the GSA, same thing, and you get all of these great information and advertising on government work that's being out there. So I would suggest that. Obviously, like I said, it's also a good idea to start building lists where you can email people. What one firm we worked with started was a newsletter, which I thought was a great idea. And they would basically give out information of what they were doing, where they were going, and any new contracts they received. So if it was a plumbing firm, for example, and they said, hey, I'm working at this new building in Jamaica Avenue, people saw that and they started to reach out. It started to draw attention to them as they were gaining steam, so to speak.
So before we go and ask Carl for his answer, I just want to build upon what you said, Anthony, a couple of things. One, I know on the state level, and I'm sure on every government level, city and state, I see webinars on how to really utilize like the New York State contract reporter that you're talking about, right? Yes. And that's good because you can control more your destiny and looking at opportunities on the city state level that you think may be applicable for your business, right?
Exactly.
And that's really important because oftentimes on the city level and the state level, business owners don't really put in the right commodity codes or the NAICS codes, and they may not be seeing a lot of the opportunities that may be applicable for their business. So what you just shared with the audience in regards to these resources is a way for them to identify opportunities that they may not have known about because they're not seeing those opportunities come into their email because they don't have the right commodity codes or the NAICS codes for that information to be sent out. So
no, that's great. That is definitely true. The other thing I like to say is that, you know, when you're dealing with government agencies, a lot of times people don't have the resources to reach out to firms. So they say, for example, I'm looking for $50,000 worth of office supplies. I'm not going to call 100 firms. I'm just going to put in a contract reporter and hope that I get enough people to respond back. So at the same token, that's where we have to do our homework. You know, the other thing is working with firms like ours. There's RFW Wilkins that's out there. You know, what they do is we're in the limelight. So we kind of, once you're on our bidders list, we're going to keep you in mind for any project that we're working on because that's a great resource. The other thing is, like I said, making friends and knowing other MWBEs that, you know, the one thing I would like to see more of in the MWBE world would be MWBEs working together. Because I think there's strength in numbers, and that's a great resource.
Hence, quick strategy partners.
Exactly.
So, Carl, we are not forgetting you, but I do want Anthony to really talk in a little more detail because you mentioned about how you're working with RF Wilkins, and you are specifically working on the JFK redevelopment project, and you just kind of mentioned it in like a little sentence about how you're looking to identify MWBE. So can you go in a little more detail for folks about your role with the JFK redevelopment project? Because you are an instrumental organization, individual in regards to people getting contract opportunities with the JFK redevelopment project.
Most definitely. So we were hired to kind of be the third party, kind of the wedge in between the Port Authority and the terminal developers. We also are working with RFW Consultants. They're also a compliance company like ours. They do a lot of business development with firms. So both of us, what our job is to help terminal developers, help the Port Authority as far as reporting, but also finding MWBs that are qualified to do certain work, get the word out as far as outreach, and just keep everyone connected. So while we have an important role as far as compliance and making sure everybody's up to par with their numbers, including, as Stacie mentioned, a lot of people forget workforce. We're there to help the unions. We're there to help everybody, whether, you know, they have certain goals, especially in Southeast Queens. They have a local goal presence, which I love. I think, you know, that was needed for this project. So we're the wedge. And what we talk about is once you sign up with us, it's free. Obviously, we just get your information. We know what trade you are. We keep you in mind. Look, JFK is going to be a huge project. It's going to be great, but we keep you in mind for anything. We're doing work for Columbia University. We're doing work for EDC. We're doing work for DASNY, School Construction Authority. And our database, we're always informing, you know, firms and companies where to go, where the work is, or we're basically reaching out to them for a quote. And the same with, you know, the funny thing is out of this, we made a partnership with RFW Consultants, and I always talk about firms working together. Now we're going out after other work together. So this one little contract that we're working on with the Port Authority and, you know, terminal developers has helped us, you know, open up other opportunities to work with RFW, which I think is great because, again, I love when minorities are working together because I think together we're stronger.
So, Anthony, I got to joke with you for a hot minute. You know, yeah. I want to be in a position where I call the contract you got with JFK redevelopment project a one little contract. I know it's relative, but let me
yeah. Well,
I like check you out. Customers don't give me the ballers. You're like, a little contract.
No, don't get me wrong. I'm hoping it grows to big, but right now it's still small. Okay.
Love it. And I know, Carl, you've been waiting to answer this question too, about these opportunities and, what Danielle had posed. So go ahead and give us your spin. I'm curious to hear because you're doing even more than just JFK. Danielle, Anthony's saying a little bit. Imagine how much Carl is really exposed to with all of the capital projects that are going on. So,
well, actually, let me just start by saying that I do have some goodies for folks on the line, especially those in construction. And so, Danielle, what I will be doing is I will be sending you some information that you could share with the participants. And they include current job opportunities with Holt and at Terminal 8 right now. And there's a number of parcels of opportunities, particularly in construction right now, that, and I'm talking about like maybe about 20 something. Different areas of work from painting, flooring, landscaping, electrical. And so I'll share this with you. There's specific timelines for response and all the contact information. And that way you could send it to the participants so they can jump on this as soon as possible. So that's with the terminals. And obviously within the Port Authority, I'll also send you an RFQ. That's a request for quotes, and that is for general construction services. And the Port Authority issues this request so that when the need arises for some of the specific areas of work that it desires, it already has a pre-qualified pool of firms that it could consider. There is an RFQ right now, and I will send you a copy of that you can distribute to your participants so they can pursue it. And it's really good because that way it will help position them for a great variety of general construction area work that they could at least participate in anywhere within the Port Authority. It won't just be just aviation, but any of our facilities within the Port District.
So, Carl, building on that and answering like networking, because Anthony was sharing some of, how he's been helping firms transition, what they can do to stay relevant and networking with these opportunities, even though you're going to share it with us to share with the participants, what sort of networking opportunities would you suggest specifically with the Port Authority that is happening and preparing for these ways that these outreach, not only opportunities, but what's coming that positions MWBEs to take advantage of, particularly at the port?
So in many ways, those of you that have already engaged in best practices with respect to networking and so on should continue what you used to do. It's just that now you're going to do it in a different format. We're in a different world. And so you have to become a little more adept at navigating the electronic and technology fields right now. Also, keep your relationships akindle. What do I mean by this? Relationships that you already have, keep them fresh. Let people remember. Let all your network know that you're still around, you're still operational, you're still looking to do business. Fine-tune your capabilities and your references to make sure they are very specific for the items that you're going to pursue. Because keep in mind that it is a very competitive field. Resources are dwindling, and so more people are out there trying to get work that you are trying to get as well. The question becomes, what differentiates you from the others in the field? And so you really have to step up your game in that regard. And that includes having tight references. That also includes being responsive with having an email and a phone number that if you provide these as your contact information, that you definitely can be reached. You should have alternate contacts. So for example, if you have an assistant, to have that assistant contact information available. If you're in construction, and I'm assuming that most of you are, have someone that can provide estimates as quickly as possible. This kind of the ability to provide that kind of turnaround and to provide a competitive bid, a competitive quote, is the things that will differentiate you from your competition. But most importantly, make sure you can be reached. A lot of people right now are losing opportunities simply because they cannot be reached. And that's sad.
So
That
wait,
should not be happening.
hold on, Carl. People are losing opportunities because they have the wrong phone number?
Or they're not responding to them. They're not responding to the when they're contacted, they're not answering, or the email they're not responsive to their email addresses, and so on. So, in fact, one of the things that I'm doing right now is when I know there's a parcel of work coming out, and I want to target a number of MWBEs that I believe are fully well qualified to pursue this work. In advance, I try to reach them myself, so that in the event that the contractor tries to reach them, that there should be no difficulties. What I try to do is confirm the accuracy of the information. And it is still unfortunate that people have information in the database that does not match their current contact information.
Mm.
Okay.
And Anthony is not in his head, so I guess Anthony is seeing that as well.
Very true, and a very great point. Just keeping all your information up to date is very important, because Danielle, as you said, if I'm working at a government agency and I go to the database and pull up 10 firms and say, okay, let me reach out to them, and their numbers are off or they don't respond, that's big. Make it a point to check emails 2 or 3 times a day, things like that. Carl is bringing up some great points.
I think be smart, be efficient in how you function. It is the summer right now. Some kids are home, unemployed. Your little cousin, your niece, your daughters that are technologically savvy, it doesn't hurt to start grooming them in your business. They could be responsive to your incoming emails and help redirect them to you. That way, you want to make sure you don't miss anything, because the thing that you miss could be the opportunity that you really needed. This is not a hypothetical. This really happens. It really, and it is sad, and it makes me look bad, and I don't like that, because it gives, because when I tell a contractor I want you to contact so and so and so, and then they try to do that and they cannot reach you, then it messes up my credibility that so keeping the information correct at all times, taking periodically reviewing your information in the databases to ensure they're accurate. All pieces of information that you have is accurate. Your references are current relative to what you do. These are basic steps, but they're critical in making a difference in getting work.
And Carl, I just want to bring up something, kind of digressing a little bit from our original question in regards to networking, but based on what you're talking about, how important is NAICS codes when you're identifying from the Port Authority database, like you said, a list of viable MWBEs? Let's say you're looking for HVAC, and they may not be coded correctly in the system, and so therefore they could be a viable MWBE, but they're not coming up for you to even contact.
And that's critical. So with that, the next codes are so important, because as Danielle just said, if you're not coded correctly, you will not come up for opportunities. And so you'll be losing a lot. That's why it goes back to what I just said, that periodically I strongly encourage you to review your profile in each of these databases, including the Port Authority, New York State, New York City, wherever you're certified, to look at how your profile, the codes under which you're certified, and to have the contact information of the certification unit in each of these places, so that immediately you can correct, you can ask for these corrections to be made. One strategy you might want to employ is, if you know someone that does exactly what you do, but they appear to be getting notices about employment all the time, take a look at their profile, take a look at the codes, how they're coded, and replicate their code in your profile. because that will likely increase the chances of you being contacted just as they are for these opportunities.
That's a good point. And hey, Patricia, thank you for tuning in. She is the factoring lady, B2B financial resource. So she's glad to be here and se habla español. So we appreciate you. And she said, thank you, Carl, for the great reminders, because it seems simple, but clearly it's an issue. You and Anthony have both said that people are missing opportunities. You could be 3 feet from gold and have no idea just because you didn't answer an email or your phone number is wrong. OMG. So we're hoping that everybody that's watching, at the minimum, you're making sure that all of your contact information is what it needs to be as far as networking. And I just want to circle back, as Danielle brought up that point. Another point that was really important that Anthony raised is getting on the phone, actually making contact with people you've been networking with, because sometimes that personal touch goes a little bit further than just sending out a newsletter. Would you agree, Carl?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're still social beings, and the closest thing to not doing that face-to-face interaction is actually hearing someone's voice. Our ability to communicate with folks is more appealing via our senses, when we see, when we can touch, shake a hand, and when we can hear their voice, their tone and everything. That's why I put my face on the screen today, because there's a more there's a more personal interaction, a more, a sense of, you can feel the vibes, the person's energy, what they're discussing, and so that's very important to do the phone calls, especially if you're trying to get business. Who do you start the phone calls with? Start with people that were already in your network. Okay? Get warmed up. Okay? Take notes. Refine your strategy. Have your elevator pitch ready for the new people. Because some people, for example, if you call me and you ask me about a contract, and I tell you to call XYZ company, you should have an elevator pitch ready. Something that can tell the person something about you that will interest them immediately to get you into their sphere of business. And that's very, very important.
So, Carl, we have a question for Anthony in regards to kind of community engagement and what that looks like. But I want to bring up a really important point before we move forward. And that is, one, when you look at the state, it's very important. I think we mentioned this last week, but I want to mention it again. With the state, NAICS codes are very important, and with the city, commodity codes are important. So the city doesn't look at NAICS codes to identify MWBEs for opportunities. We will have a third part of this series, and we will be having someone from the city coming on as a guest next week, and we could talk about that more. But Carl, how does an MWBE identify the correct NAICS code if they're looking for a Port Authority opportunity, so they can ensure they do have the correct codes?
So one of the things that let me take it from this perspective. If you're trying to identify opportunities that we have posted, and to see if you can be matched to these opportunities, it's like it's an open forum. It's publicly advertised, so anyone can choose to pursue any opportunity. The question becomes, when reviewing when screening for who's qualified and who is not, whether you will be considered qualified based on your coding. Okay. Now, this is an issue that starts with certification. How does that happen? It happens based on the references you provided that determine the codes that you receive. Okay. Now, should you have changes in your references, in the work you've done, immediately, and always stay in touch with the certification department, because they're the ones that can adjust your codes, remove codes, add codes, modify codes, so that you can have a more precise profile to match the opportunities that you want to pursue. Let me give you a more specific example. The Port Authority currently has what we call a small business enterprise program, and we're actually setting aside contracts up to $2.5 million. So, what people like me do, I negotiate with the various departments to certain parcels of work and say, well, I think this contract could be set aside for small businesses. What we do once this happens, we set aside a contract. What happens is we invite based on codes and qualifications. Very often, if you're not coded correctly, you cannot get invited. Okay, you won't be invited, and it's unfortunate because your profile does not match what you say you do. Okay, so you need to correct that. If you believe, for example, you're a general contractor and you have expertise in, let's say, flooring and painting, but we just have you coded as, let's say, general contractor, and then there's an opportunity specifically for flooring, it is likely that we might invite you, but less because it's general construction, a general contractor. But if it were not, because you did not have flooring in there, you would not be invited. So who's responsible? That's you really your responsibility to come back and tell us, hey, this is my profile. It appears that I'm not coded for flooring. Please add flooring.
And that's like the proverbial, you won't have a seat at the table.
You won't. And it is sad with the SBE with the set asides right now because we work hard in negotiating those contracts, and it ends up that few of the firms that we invite bid because it's not properly targeted.
So that's a great point to really just remind everybody that it won't be automatically updated. You have to go and contact the certification department to make sure that your proper codes are there.
Yeah. And right now we also if your certification is not current, you probably might not be invited because the assumption is that a firm that was last certified in, let's say, 2016 may not be the same firm today. They could have sold the company. There could be new ownership that becomes questionable and whether they're still eligible for certification. So we're no longer taking that risk. And that means that we vet you. We want to ensure that if a firm is eligible for certification, that the firm is currently certified. And because we do not want to be in a situation where we allow firms that are no longer eligible end up winning contracts and deprive firms that are eligible from those contracts. So again, it's back to you to ensure that your information is correct.
So, Anthony, we just wanted to switch gears a little bit because what's equally important is just like Carl is identifying MWBEs through the database for opportunities. You know, pre-COVID, your organization would do a lot of in-person community engagement to identify MWBEs for contract opportunities. So now during COVID-19, how have you been able to, I know you have a significant database yourself, but how do you continue to engage with MWBEs to add to that list of MWBEs?
Yeah, great point. Yeah, basically the same way. It's just different, as we all keep saying. It's a new world. So we're doing more webinars. We're still working with a lot of organizations. For example, we may work with NIMEC, National Association of Minority Contractors, and they'll do a webinar series on something, or the Women's Builders Council, or Professional Women in Construction, things like that. So we're still out there and we're still gathering information and hopefully meeting firms. Obviously, we try to be out there because the more we meet, the better for the community, the firms that we're going to be out there. We'll also do local workforce engagements and local trainings. For example, we recently just completed an OSHA training course for Southeast Queens. So, obviously staying connected joining an organization such as yours, but also, joining others, whatever kind of fits your mold of what your company is. It's great to be part of something that you can get more information to. But most importantly, I always tell people, keep your ears to the ground. Always be willing to listen. Always be willing to, as Carl points out, and I love what Carl said, is, keep in touch with your contacts. You have to constantly stay in touch with them. People sometimes get the wrong idea that they're going to be a pain in the what if they keep calling or keep emailing. But I tell people all the time, it's good to reach out, whether it's once a week or once a month. It's good to stay in contact, because sometimes what happens is things are fresh. What I always say is fresh on the mind. So I may be speaking to Stacie today, and Stacie tells me, Anthony, I'm looking for someone to cater this meeting that I have. And then, a catering company will call me up, and I'm like, oh, wow, you know what? Reach out to Stacie right away. So little things like that happen all the time. That's why I tell people to always stay in contact, even if it's just a quick email to say, hey, how's everything? How was your weekend? Just staying in touch. Keep me in mind if the opportunity arises. So again, with community engagements, is always, look for your local community, whether it's working through your community boards, your local elected officials. It's good to stay in contact with people just so they know you're there and you're there to help.
Let me add one more thing. You need to become very strategic and efficient in how you function. What do I mean by that? Find out, get a sense of what the opportunities are. Port Authority posts all opportunities that are coming up. For example, I'm going to share some opportunities with Danielle to distribute to you guys. What you need to do is to make the phone call to find out specifics. You want to find out how much work are you looking to do? I mean, how many people are you considering for this work? Do you have you used someone before to do that work? You want to do a competitive analysis, because resources are few and you want to be efficient. You do not just want to go after everything because it appears attractive. You will lose yourself in that mix. Be very strategic and nimble to make sure that what you're pursuing is right within your ballpark. If something is posted, an opportunity is posted that attracts you, but it's way beyond your means, what you should do is ask for the plan holders list. Which are the big contractors that are considering pursuing that opportunity? That way you can start following up with them immediately before they start responding to the bid. That way you got an advance, because the 30% goal on these contracts, it's not optional. And I go after them for that 30%. So if not you, they're going to get somebody else. Okay. So you want to be strategic about this. You also want to know, on our website, we also post when we identify who is the low bidder. You could see that information and immediately go to that person and say, hey, I know this contract is going to require MWBE participation. I've reviewed the scope of work. I see that there's some elements of work that I do. I would be more than happy to support your ability to fulfill that goal. Here is my capability statement. Here is a list of my references that match those capabilities. I would like to be considered. When you do that, you could follow up with me and tell me, Carl, I sent my information to so-and-so. And then what I will do is, should they come and say they couldn't find anyone, I'll say, hey, but what about so-and-so? You have to triangulate the situation. You have to be smart, because it's very, very competitive. 30% is a lot of money. And a lot of people that are not eligible are trying to become eligible. They'll get their lawyers, their accountants to make them certified. And you who are certified, who is best capable to do the work, and you're not up front, should get the work. But you have to be smart. You have to be strategic. You have to leverage technology, relationships, and what's available.
Agreed. We couldn't have said it better. because that's what's important for everybody to really hear, that you're there advocating for MWBEs to get access, as Danielle said earlier, a seat at the table. But there's some due diligence that has to be done on the MWBE's part to be able to
help you.
Yes, that's a good one. Help me help you.
Yeah.
So I know time is moving quickly, and we have a couple more questions to get into for our MWBEs. And we really appreciate having both of you here, that you do this every day. You see what's going on. You see the trends that are happening. And, you know, what best practices have you seen subcontractors utilize to secure relationships with primes? Because everybody's not in a position to go after the prime, to do the big contracts. Like Anthony said, you know, JFK is a little project, but, you know, going after the big prime. What have you seen subcontractors, what best practices that we can share with our audience to secure, like bonding, invoicing, anything along those content pieces?
One, Anthony, do you want to go ahead?
You start.
Okay.
I don't want to put my foot in my mouth again.
You didn't put your foot in your mouth.
No, you won't. No, you won't. So, if you don't have money, you cannot stay operational. And what do I mean by that? Ensure that you have a request for payment. Do not accept a contract with a clarity on how and when might you will get paid for your work. Very often businesses fail because of cash flow. It is not because of competence. It's not because you don't know your work. It's not because you cannot get the resources like the labor force. It is because you do not get paid on time, so you can pay your laborers and they don't walk off your project. It is because you do not get paid on time, so you can position yourself so you can go and network for other work. Cash flow is critical. How do you do this? You ensure you clarify the terms and payments about your contract. Should you encounter a situation where you feel you've been brought on board a contract, but it appears that the plan on how they want to pay you does not sit with you well, contact people like me. We are your advocates, because my objective is to ensure that minority and women-owned businesses, the small contractor, always has money. If you don't have money, you can't do business, man. That's the bottom line. If you do not have cash flow, it is even a psychological stress knowing that you cannot, you have that money, you know you earned it, you know you completed the work, but you're getting to run around about when to get paid. That should never happen. And the way you mitigate that situation, among the best practices I'm seeing, and I've heard from successful MWBEs, is to clarify what are the terms of payment in advance. And I even strongly suggest, very often the contractors might tell you, well, we pay when we get paid. And you might want to say something like, I do understand that, but can we work something out so that, you know, when I finish 25%, that I get paid within a week, and not necessarily when you invoice the Port Authority, because we don't know what could happen. And sometimes they're not being honest about the invoicing, about when they receive payment. You have to think of it from their perspective. If I invoice the Port Authority for $6 million, the longer I can hold that $6 million before paying you and put it in the market and have it invested and get returns on it, the better for me. And I'm not talking about 1 week. I'm not talking about 2 weeks. I'm talking about sometimes they do this for months. You want to get paid. You want to have this clear in advance. You want to understand clearly what your work is. You do not want them to slide in extra work that we did not discuss. Not because I'm a minority or small business, you should just take advantage of just having me. No, you want me to do this extra work? How much are you going to pay me for it? And always remember, especially for public agency work, you have agency reps that are your advocate. They're here to negotiate, to discuss on your behalf. So, for example, if you have a payment issue, if, for example, you want to discuss a payment issue for a contract you've been awarded, and you feel like you're not sure which way that might go, call me, and I will help bridge that gap. And I'll call XYZ, Mr. Prime. It's my understanding that so and so is trying to negotiate a payment arrangement. Um, I will be more than happy to facilitate your ability to get paid from the Port Authority, should you consider getting them paid on time or within the time frames that they need. We got to work things out. My interest is you, and I'm here to advocate on your behalf, but you have to do those little advanced things. You have to request. Don't be shy. You're shy, you're not going to get paid. That's how it happens.
So, Carl, with that said, we're talking about working capital, but also, and that could be during the project, but what about upfront? Again, with coronavirus, a lot of businesses have tapped into maybe their savings, what money they had for working capital, but they still are right there. Maybe they get a contract. Can you negotiate with the prime to pay you a deposit upfront so that you can start the project, and then maybe 60 days out, they may.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And you want, be smart. Call. Hey, call. So and so got me for this
Carl,
contract.
you keep saying call, Carl.
Well, email me first. Email me first to make sure. But contact me and tell me, hey, Carl, so and so is bringing me on board for this contract. Um, but I really would like to get some kind of payment upfront, so that way I can situate myself correctly and to make sure I can deliver a great job for them. Um, can you help me negotiate this? Absolutely. Because what I will do is I will very nicely remind the firm we have a 30% goal, and I'm very happy that you're bringing on board so and so. Congratulations. But one of the things that we want to make sure that that firm can deliver for you, so that we're not unhappy with your deliverables, is we want to make sure they get paid on time. But before that, we would like to see if you could pay them some money up front, with clarity about what you're paying for and the work that they're going to do. We could work this out. I could help bridge that gap, leverage the might of the agency to negotiate on your behalf, because I know when you have that money, and especially, by the way, if it's a contractor that has done work with you before and they know you, that should not be. It's you have a track record with them, so it should not be a situation where they feel, well, I don't know if he will deliver. It is a situation about, no, we want you to make sure that subcontractor is in a good position to deliver effectively on your project. And one of the things that could be an impediment is them not getting money, or sustaining the cash flow and paying their workers, and getting the right equipment and resources to do the work that they require. So to mitigate that, the objective is to do the work. So what we want is for you have resources. Why don't you just break them off a little something to get them started?
And Anthony, you've been waiting patiently, so we want you to chime in also on what you think in regards to what we asked.
Yeah. No, look, Carl brings up some great points. Obviously, look, best practices. Obviously, your invoicing and paperwork should be up to par. The other thing is, what I always tell firms is, things can happen. So if something goes wrong, just make sure you're attacking it right away. You're not just letting it slide by. It's always a good practice. I always do this with all of our clients is, as a job starts, just making sure everything is going right. Am I doing everything up to the way your standards or what you want? This way you're making sure you're still doing things. Obviously, you want all your language in the contract. You want to understand everything, as Carla stating, about payment terms and things like that. The other things that look what's available to you. I mean, this city has a loan program if you get a contract. The state has a loan program. Look what's out there if it's a cash flow issue. If it's not, like I said, I always say customer service is the best, because building relationships is part of doing business. So as you're working through with people, making sure that you are doing the right thing and what they want you to do. And of course, if something does go wrong, just make sure you attack it right away so you can clean it up and things like that.
Okay. And then we have about 10 minutes, but the last question that we asked, and I'm going to pose this to Anthony, is that about 2 weeks ago, there was a webinar. The advisory council meeting was done virtually. And at that time, Port Authority said that they will not, they're stopping any future projects technically that have not, construction hasn't started yet. And then there was another webinar like 2 or 3 days later with one of the developers talking about opportunities. So for, a business owner, MWBE, such as myself, that was on both webinars, can you clarify that so that MWBEs could understand that there are still a ton of opportunities out there, even though Port Authority directly may, put on hold their own construction projects?
Correct, and that's the key. Just understand that it's a P3, public-private partnership, as far as the work being done in the JFK. So the terminal developers, while they are slow in moving on because of COVID, they are still moving on. So there is work, and as Carl pointed out before, American Airlines Terminal 8, HULT, is still actively seeking contractors. So they are still doing, while the Port Authority is on hold with their specific contracts for the project. They will be moving shortly as well. But the terminal developers are going. So they are in a procurement phase. American Airlines is a little ahead of everybody as far as some boots on the ground work. But they'll be moving really soon and fast. So when things do start, as far as when construction really starts again, they will be moving very fast. So you need to get in front of them now. A new JFK.com, you can get on all of the lists so you can receive all of the information. You can see all of the webinars that are coming up. For example, I know today there's something to help firms with pre-qualification forms and things like that, because you have to be pre-qualified in all of these projects. So American Airlines, they have work right now, and Carl pointed out some of the trades they're looking for. I think it's every first Friday of the month that they do a webinar. So if you haven't attended one, you should definitely attend it. Also, NIMAC is holding an event tomorrow, National Association of Minority Contracts, where they have all the terminal developers on there, and they'll be giving out the information so you can sign up to get more information on when all of these opportunities will be going. So again, opportunities are there now on a smaller scale, but they're there. The Port Authority will be coming shortly, as Carl can attest to, and be ready.
And it's not just contracting opportunities, there are professional services, there are other opportunities that MWBs can pursue, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, definitely. And there's also, there's local participation in workforce. Keep in mind that, obviously a lot of people are unemployed right now. And if there's work that they're looking for, whether it's working at the airport when all of this work is completed, or, working for a construction trade or things like that, even, to be honest, administrative. We're helping we're helping people get jobs doing administrative work and things like that, security contract. So there's a lot of work that's going to be out there. It's going to employ a lot of people as far as the daily work at the airport. Just think of everything there, baggage handlers and everything else that goes in an airport. But also think of all the construction trades and getting it done. And as Stacie pointed out, there's professional services, because in all of this work, there's contracts. And in all of these contracts, there's a lawyer looking at them or putting them together, and think about all the financial work that's going on. So there's accountants and, all of this other work that's being done. So there is a lot of opportunities. I haven't been doing a lot of work on it yet, but it will come. But it in all honesty, it is I think it was Stacie I heard this first from, but obviously a lot of people I've heard after because of Stacie. This is a legacy project, And I think a lot of people should definitely go for it. There's going to be so much, I think, good to come out of this for MWBs, which I think is what is needed, especially right now at a time. You know, just this morning on the way into work, I saw an article how I forget the exact numbers, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but how 60% of MWBs may not come out of this. You know, so you know, when you look at COVID and what it's done to the industry, it's going to be hard. Obviously, it's going to be harder on the smaller businesses, the local businesses. And this is where people like myself, Carl, Stacie, Danielle can help out everybody and each other, help each other, and hopefully, you know, help people stay afloat and then continue into becoming, growing stronger later on.
Yes. And then my last question, with the opportunities that you both mentioned, what is the timeline? Is it like, you know, fall 2020, early winter 2020, kind of put things in context and give these NWBEs a sense of urgency about these
The
opportunities?
timelines are short, and that is part of the problem. That is part of the problem. And that's one of the things that I'm looking to negotiate with major contractors. Like, listen, don't give a 3-week or 4-week timeline for something that requires probably 6 weeks or 7 weeks response. Okay, you have to understand that these small firms sometimes have to hire the resource to provide an effective response to you. It's costly. So let's be mindful. So my part of what I'm going to do is to start negotiating with them when you have those needs, to make sure people become aware of them in a very timely manner. What do I mean by that? Enough time so they can prepare an effective response, and enough time so that you cannot come back to me and say, well, nobody responded. Oh, their price was too high. You know, I've been around the game. I've had enough of the game, and I just keep it straight. Don't try to don't ask someone to bid a $500,000 contract when you only want to give them 3 days to respond. No, it's not going to work. And you know it's not going to work. And you cannot come back to me and say you exercise a good faith effort. I'm not going to accept that. Okay. Now, with that said, subcontractors and minority firms, have your references ready. Have your references ready for the areas of work that you do, where you are expert. What you need in your reference? You need the contact information of the of the prime or the business that you did the work for. You need the value of the work that you performed, that you completed successfully. You need the time frame within which you did that work. Okay, you want to make sure that the contact information that you have for that reference is correct. How do you do that? You test it out yourself. You use the contact information they gave you, and you test it out to see if it works, if they're reachable. And when you're getting ready to bid on contracts, let them know that, hey, Carl, I'm getting ready to bid on such and such and such. I suspect you may be contacted. Please be aware of this. You want to triangulate the situation. You want to make sure there's no wiggle room for error. Why? Because you're not the only game in town. Other people are trying to get the same work that you're trying to get. So the question becomes, why you?
And I'll just add that there is some stuff going on as we speak. As far as American Airlines will have some bids out very shortly, and it's specifically Holt because it's a construction part. So within a couple of weeks, you'll see certain things. Obviously, make sure you're signed up to Holt's pre-qualifications, because you do have to be pre-qualified for this stuff. And you can go to newjfk.com to get the information on how to do that. Coming on later on in as Danielle say, fourth quarter of this year, you will see Terminal 1 as far as having opportunities out there, and hopefully by then the Port Authority will have some of their work out. And obviously first quarter of next year, I assume fourth quarter, first quarter, probably first half of next year will be very busy as far as a lot of procurement opportunities. Because of the delay, I could see them being rushed to do the job now.
Okay. So Stacie, you're going to close us out. I'm not even going to do any, we're down to the wire with all this great information.
Great information, but Carl said you're not the only game in town. Queen Strategy Partner is the only game. Love me style.
You are.
Definitely.
I just had to put that out there. Carl knows
you are.
I love to tease, but we definitely are happy that both of you came on. We're getting a lot of response that this was great information. Thank you to everyone that was viewing live, to those who are catching the replay. Carl Peters and Anthony Peterson are two resources that you need to connect with. We'll have their contacts up in our videos so that you can reach out. Carl said to email him. So you just tell him you heard it right here or from the ground up, real time.
I get hundreds of phone calls a day.
Absolutely. But we thank you all for tuning in. We're here every Tuesday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to bring you this information. It is our work and our way of connecting with MWBE so that we all can thrive post-COVID-19 and buck up against that statistic that Anthony read. There's a lot of really staggering statistics out there. Keep focused on your skills and your talents. It will make room for you. Don't give up. Keep pressing forward, and From the Ground Up is here to support you on the journey. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Stay safe, be well, wear your mask, and definitely wash your hands and use sanitizer. The Rona is still out here. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Okay.